a lot of people, especially right now, they have their base tan going and they kind of just think, I'm fine, I don't need to worry about it. What are some of the key things you want people to keep in mind, say they're heading out for a football game on a Saturday?
Yeah, I mean, we always think about sunscreen, and it is important, but protective clothing is also important, and trying to avoid those peak hours. In driver's ed, they taught us about driving at 10 to 2, but that's the same for the height of the UV index. So trying to get your sun exposure before 10 a.m. or after 2 p.m. is helpful. And then as far as sunscreen, wearing a good sunscreen and trying to reapply is also helpful.
Okay, let's talk about reapplication first, because for me, I'll put on a base on my face and on my neck, and then I put on makeup, and that's maybe at 9 a.m. So if I'm spending the day in the sun, I mean, is that sunscreen even really doing anything for me by 3 o'clock if I haven't sweat at all?
Good point. Yeah, I mean, most sunscreens only last a couple of hours, which is something that we're only, as dermatologists, only preaching more often or more recently. So you should reapply after a couple of hours. If you're just out for a couple of hours, no biggie, but if it's like an all-day thing, definitely reapply.
Have you seen benefits or anything about the ones, like I've seen the ones that spray on like a mist, they're supposed to be like over makeup sunscreens?
It depends. There's so many variables, but I think there is a convenience factor that you're alluding to. And so we always joke that the best sunscreen is the one you use. Right. And so obviously we can talk more about the details of sunscreen. There's UVA and UVB and mineral and physical, and there's so many different things to consider. But wearing something that you like, that you tolerate, is one of the most important factors. So some of it is a little trial and error.
Okay. Yeah, one of the things I've noticed too with facial sunscreen and then the makeup is like, even though I have very dry skin, I end up getting kind of little clogged pores. I mean, is there some pre-sunscreen thing that you could do for that?
Well, there is fortunately a lot of cosmeceuticals and makeup. They are adding an SPF, a layer of sun protection to most products, and so you do get kind of an additive layer. So there's sunscreen and some primers, for example. So to the degree that you can do that, I think that would be helpful. I like this product by a company called Color Science. They make a mineral-based sunscreen that is particularly helpful for reapplication. So sometimes people will refer to it as a mineral-based dry sunscreen.
Okay.
And it's great for reapplying because you don't have to have a clean face to do it.
Oh, I'm going to have to look into that one.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about the mineral versus what is titanium dioxide is a pretty popular thing. Are there any risks that you're aware of just that standard traditional, hey, we know it works sunscreen that's been on the shelf for a long time?
No. And of course the devil's in the details, but like a zinc based sunscreen is generally the most effective. It's kind of what back in the 70s and the 80s you'd see with the lifeguards, right? This big coat of white sunscreen and it's actually not much different than what you put on a baby's bottom who has diaper rash. It's not the most elegant, of course, and thankfully sunscreens have evolved to be a little bit more user-friendly. So there's no harm in using a physical-based sunscreen like zinc or titanium. Oftentimes those are called mineral-based. So that's one thing to consider. And then the other thing is what we talked about earlier, which is trying to find one that doesn't look too greasy. But in terms of safety, you're good to go with one that has an active ingredient that's either zinc or titanium.
Okay, so pretty much anything on the shelf, the idea that like applying something with those chemicals onto your skin could cause cancer in itself, that's just a little bit of hype?
Well, there's, I would say somewhere in the middle. Like, there is some evidence that in some sunscreens you may have heard are banned in Hawaii now. Like in 2021, they banned some things because they were not safe for the reef and some of the marine life. So some of those have ingredients like avobenzone and oxybenzoate, those kind of things. So I would say if you can avoid that, I would. Some evidence of cancer causing is different than, proof of a 3-time increase. But if you want to err on the side of caution, I would avoid some of those kind of ingredients.
Okay. So my favorite, just for the simple fact of I hate the feel of too much sunscreen on my skin. So all of my bathing suits are like long sleeves. I have the giant hat at all times. Just a standard bathing suit that's not like built to have UV protection. I mean, is that gonna be enough?
Probably not enough.
Okay.
Probably standard garments that aren't engineered to have an SPF may give you 5 or 10 units of SPF, and it's not nothing.
Okay.
But there are ones that are specifically designed and will give you more protection. And there's various brands out there, and aesthetically, right, in derm, you have to consider aesthetics a lot, and so there thankfully are a lot more brands that kind of look cool to put on.
Yeah. Yep. My kids make fun of me, but I think what I have looks cool.
Yeah, there you go.
So I've also heard that even in the shade, you can have some sort of sun damage. Is that true? Like if you don't see the actual physical ray of light on your skin, that you could still have damage?
It's possible. You definitely want to be careful. I think in that case, you can certainly have reflection. So definitely be careful even in the shade. You're much safer. But to say that there's no risk, I think it would be an overstatement.
Right. And a lot of people, they just think about cancer, right? Others, we think about, wrinkles or like sunspots. I mean, there's definitely a plethora of different damages that come from the sun. Is there anything aside from what I just mentioned that people might like think about?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. In fact, one of the ways I would remember, UVA versus UVB protection is for burns and skin cancer, and UVA is for aging, photo aging, if you will. And so some sunscreens provide broad coverage, some are more for A versus B. So, for instance, in Europe and in Japan, there's a lot more sunscreens that help with UVA, which is premature aging of the skin.
Yeah.
And we're all going to age, of course, but we want to look our best until the inevitable. So getting something that has good UVA protection, which can be hard to find in the U.S. because we have pretty tough FDA process, and also they haven't updated things in quite a while. So other countries have access to more UVA protection.
It's so interesting. I'm glad you brought that up because I would have forgotten to ask you about it. But yeah, my friend who's a lawyer from LA, so she knows everything, right?
Yeah.
She got me into this Korean sunscreen, and I use it just because of, I heard what you said, but I had no research confirming that it was true. But I mean, that's sort of those additional protections that they have access to. I mean, nothing that is unsafe about them, right? It's just extended.
Exactly. Yeah. We just honestly we haven't updated. We haven't updated our our sunscreens since 1996. So there are plenty of safe sunscreens that we just haven't tested yet. And it's interesting when I talk to young people and try to get them to apply sunscreen. Sometimes it can be difficult, and I try to tell them about scare them straight, right? But when I say you're gonna age way quicker, that actually works.
Oh yeah.
So I think both of those are at play when we get ourselves too much sun.
Yeah. Okay. Last question, and then I'll let you get back to it. One of the girls at work says she wears sunscreen inside because she thinks that even the light from her computer monitor could damage her skin. Does sunscreen work that way?
So there is some evidence that what people are calling blue light can affect your skin.
Yeah.
And some sunscreens, some companies are kind of extending, if you will, their formulations to provide some protection against blue light.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's not all sunscreens will provide blue light protection, but it's another thing to consider. But there are companies that can protect you from that.
Very interesting.
Yes.
Okay. Did I